Aslam. Does it just speak? Oh,
Yeah, you can take it out. Oh, take it out if you want.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, all of you, for coming. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sr. Shaina Ayers. I have been a community member here at MCC since 2012-ish. I'm also a board member here at MCC. And a little bit about my background, I work in higher education. So I am the program coordinator for the Digital Islamic Studies curriculum program, which is in the University of Michigan. I'm 100% remote, but I manage a grant that is across all the Big Ten universities. And alhamdulillah, one of the programs I run is a summer institute. While I was running my summer institute this year, I was introduced to a student that actually got recruited to help out with the summer program for a Palestinian-based organization. That student, knowing that they were looking for individuals specifically to help high schoolers, they asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And so, I don't even know how to describe, there was a month time frame between me being introduced to the organization and me flying out to Palestine. So when I say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitated this, I would not have been able to go if I was not in the job I was in, if I did not run this summer program, to then be introduced to someone that knew this organization. So the organization that I was honored to volunteer with was called El Nazak. They are a Palestinian-based organization. It is non-denominational in terms of religion. So there are different students with different backgrounds that are a part of this program. The only qualification is that they have to be already English speaking, and that they have to do very well in the respectable schools that they are in. This program specifically helps to give different students skills to get into universities and to get into universities abroad. You can go, a lot of the students, although they don't prefer it, they have the best chance and best option if they go to universities in the US. Most of the names are recognizable. So they look for different people that can help with different skills to help them get into the universities abroad. So I was supposed to be one of 14 volunteers. 6 of us were the ones that made it. 4 of us from the US, 1 from the UK, and 1 from Spain, I believe. So there was a total of 6 of us that came from outside. The rest of it was staff. We were able to have almost 200 students there. I specifically had 11th graders, and there was about 37, almost 40 11th graders where I got to help edit their personal statements for them to get into universities. So alhamdulillah, I got permission from some of the students to be able to read their personal statements. So I will get into that, but that's a little bit of the backstory of how this all came to be. But I will do this in chronological order. So I'll talk about going there, the prep work, going there, being there with the students, and coming back. So if you're not familiar, it's usually preferable to fly into Amman. Because of all the border restrictions and all the checkpoints, I had to fly into Tel Aviv. While I would like to say that my experience flying into Tel Aviv was mild, I say it was mild because I was not physically assaulted in any type of way. I was not physically harmed. Automatically, when you come into the airport, you see nothing but bring them home signs. They have lined the whole airport with all the pictures of the individuals that were captured on October 7th. They choose who goes into separate lines. Of course, I have to go into a separate line. They ask me a bunch of questions. They give me a green visa. From what we can determine, the green visa and blue visa are the 2 that foreigners are given. Blue visas basically mean it seems like you're good to go. Green visas, which I received, meant that I get to be questioned a little bit more at every single checkpoint. I get through, I think I'm about to leave, and undercover Israeli police comes up to me, puts a badge in my face, and pulls me into interrogation. Again, my interrogation process was not bad because nothing physically happened to me. They asked a ton of questions, it's more psychological than anything. However, I do know individuals that have been detained for 8 to 10 hours. I know 2 individuals that were held for 24 hours, then told they couldn't go into the country and sent back to the US. So the fact that mine was an hour and all they did was ask me a bunch of questions, they took everything out of my suitcase, but they don't put it away, so then they leave it there for you to put it away. They say they can't touch it anymore, you have to do it. I had to sign a document that was in Hebrew and English that acknowledged the fact that I was pulled into like interrogation, and then I was free to go. As I'm walking out, another officer comes up to me and says, no, actually the dog has to go through all your stuff. So again, it was more psychological than it was physically harmful for me to go in through Tel Aviv. Once I was in Tel Aviv, I went a couple days early than the actual program, how it started. And it's because if I was gonna go through all of that, I wanted to be able to be in Jerusalem. I wanted to pray at Al-Aqsa. And alhamdulillah, I was able to. But Jerusalem was probably one of the scarier places that we were in. There is no avoiding soldiers. Like there's no avoiding IDF whatsoever when you're there. If you want to go into the Al-Aqsa compound, there's a checkpoint at every single one of the gates. You have to have an interaction with IDF. Sometimes they stop you, sometimes they don't, sometimes they question you. I was only denied entry one time. I just went around to a different gate, and I was asked a huge range of questions. The first couple of days I was there, I stayed at a Muslim-owned hotel specifically, and that is actually the view from the hotel. So you can see that is an absolutely beautiful view. A lot of locals have that view. A lot of the locals are not allowed to pray in Al-Aqsa. They are not allowed to step foot on the compound. I had locals asking me what it was like. Boys are seen as a threat at a certain age. So if you're little, then you can play there, you can have your soccer ball, you can run around. As you start getting older, you are no longer allowed to go into the Al-Aqsa compound unless it's for Juma, and that's still at their discretion. Your experience is 100% dependent on how those officers feel like in that moment they are interacting with you. So there are no rules or regulations. It truly is, one person can have an awful experience, another person may not have any issues whatsoever. It is, again, a range, but at a certain age, boys are looked at threats, and they're not allowed to go in. Anyone else that is in the Al-Aqsa compound are either foreigners, as in you have a foreign passport, or you are part of the Waqaf, you're part of the team that runs the compound itself. Once you are in the Al-Aqsa compound though, subhanAllah, like there's absolutely nothing like being there. Alhamdulillah, I was able to go to Umrah back in February. And when I say I don't know if it's because of the difficulty to actually get there and get in, praying at the Al-Aqsa compound was completely different. Like the feeling that you have, the best way I was able to describe it to friends was that if you think of the most perfect summer night, like where the temperature is amazing, everything is calm, you hear people laughing, that is what it felt like at Al-Aqsa compound. It was absolutely beautiful there. The people there are incredibly generous. And when I say there, I mean they know it from a very young age. There's a reason that is the land of the prophets. And when I say like kids have a level of hospitality, because that's just the environment they just grow up in. I had an interaction with a group of boys. Again, the oldest one couldn't have been older than 10 years old. They were playing soccer. The soccer ball came over to me. I'm recording, and one of the boys asked me if I'm live, and I was like, no, I'm just recording. He says something to me, runs off. I don't know what he says. He comes back. He has a thing of cookies for me. This is unprompted. There are no parents to tell him, go welcome her. He heard that I was a foreigner, and the first thing him and his friends did was run off to give me something. They don't have much in the first place. I have no idea where he even found cookies, let alone me at 10 years old. I probably would have been sneaking the cookies over to the side. Like, I would have been eating them. And their reaction was to offer it to me. And then they went around and was offering it to everybody else. Like, that is how they welcomed people to Al-Aqsa compound itself. I was only able to be in Jerusalem about 3 days. In that time frame, I almost spent every single salah I could go at Al-Aqsa compound praying. Again, I was only denied entry one time and I went around. However, more so than not, again, because I have a green visa, I was stopped multiple times. I was asked why Americans protest. I was asked why Americans support Hamas. I was asked for my own political views. I was asked if I understood that Hamas needs to be eliminated. I was asked if I knew anyone in Hamas, and I'm not joking when they say, like, they have been brainwashed to honestly believe the things that they do, but they also have been brainwashed enough to know that if you keep harassing somebody, you may be able to get a change in answer. So I was asked so many different times about Hamas on a regular basis. One of the mornings I went to pray for Fajr, like, I was stopped and asked the same question over and over again. Where are you from? America. Where are you from? America. Where are you from? The United States of America. Where are you from? America. Where are you from? I live in the DC area. Where are you from? America. Where are you from? America. And I can't do anything but stand there and answer. Over and over and over and over and over and over. So much so to the point where the other soldier asked me in Arabic if I understand Arabic and where I'm from. My Arabic's terrible, but I understood what he said. And when I say I have never acted more American in my life, where I was just like, I'm sorry, English? English? I don't understand. He turns to the other guy and literally says, she doesn't even speak Arabic, let her go. Their idea and their concept of groups or demographics isn't necessarily if I'm Arab. It is, does she speak Arabic? Because that would be a close enough link to being Hamas, and they would have probably held me up even longer. Coming out, same officer again. What did you say your name was? Noor. What is your name? Noor. What is your name? Noor. Another officer again then jumps in and was like, she said her name is Noor. He clearly does this to the point where the other soldiers around him get annoyed at him asking the same question over and over and over and over and over again. I had M16s pointed at me on a regular basis. And mind you, they know I'm American. Like, you can hear I'm American, I have an American passport, they don't care. One of the other volunteers was actually surprised I was not assaulted in any way, because she on a regular basis will have somebody just touch her inappropriately. And so she was actually surprised that I did not have that single interaction. She's American Palestinian, so she has an American passport. They do not care. They do not care at all. Actually before that, so the 3 days while I was in Jerusalem, I was also able to go see Bethlehem, Akka, Jaffa, and Haifa. I feel so bad for a lot of the Christian Palestinians, because I feel like a lot of people in general just forgot about them. Bethlehem itself is completely struggling. Most of their shops are closed down. They are reliant on donations from the Christian congregants that come to run their orphanages, to run the monasteries, to run all of their social services program. They have almost nothing. The only reason they are surviving, and I specifically asked them, how are you guys managing this? It's because they truly emulate this idea that if I have something, everybody else has something. If I have $5, that may mean every single person in this room has 5 cents. They truly live the message of the prophets, and there's no such thing as your neighbor not having anything while you do. They share everything. And when I say they share everything, there's a falafel uncle that the sign that he has right above his cart is, if you don't have the price of the falafel, leave with the falafel, just pray for Rasulullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. People would go up with a coin, give it to them. And it's not old food either. He would literally make people wait that he knew was not paying to make them fresh falafels. I was unfamiliar with the denomination, so as I'm sitting here trying to figure out how much it was, he was telling me to leave with the food. And I was like, no, I have money. Again, he knows I'm American. They're not getting visitors. He was still 100% willing to just let me leave with the food. This is literally the people of Palestine. Their generosity was something that, when I say I reflect on it, coming back, I believe there's a verse in the Quran. I know there's a corresponding hadith, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along the lines of when you're after you die, people are begging to go back. Do you know how selfish I feel that I did not give more while I was there? And it wasn't that I didn't give. I gave to Al-Aqsa, I gave to people there. But when I say I came back and I was just like, I could have done so much more, because the people there that had nothing were willing to give me the little bit that they have. I feel selfish in a way, and I'm like, I'm still alive, I'm still here. I can't imagine what that would look like on the day of judgment. If I'm now, I need to go back because I need to be able to give more. I can't even imagine what that day is gonna feel like for people that aren't giving. After we left from Jerusalem, the students came from different parts of Palestine. So again, it's non-denominational. It's, unfortunately, the students from Gaza, we weren't able to get out. They have almost 200 students there. 60 of them have, the organization has helped them get into boarding schools at different locations around the world. They're not allowed to leave. They have visas to leave. They would have a school where they have food, shelter, water, safety, education. They're not, they have visas and they cannot leave. Israel will not let them leave. The students that we were able to get, we bused them into Jericho, which is closer to the Jordanian border. So they met us either at 2 points. They either met us at Ramallah or Jerusalem. I was with the Jerusalem kids, so I brought the kids over from Jerusalem. If you guys have seen the news between last night and today, Israel has basically told Al Jazeera that they're not allowed to operate for the next 45 days in Ramallah. I'm terrified for some of my students, because a good number of them came from there, and if Al Jazeera is not allowed to film, I can't imagine what's about to happen to some of them or some of their families. Alhamdulillah, once we got the kids over to the West Bank, to Jericho specifically, there was a certain weight that was just kind of lifted off of me, because I don't have to interact with anyone else other than the students in the organization. We didn't leave the compound at all. We stayed there. We were fed breakfast, lunch, and dinner there. We were able to be with them the whole day. And from 7:30 in the morning to about 10 p.m. at night, we're with these students for the summer program. And mashallah, kids are still kids. Regardless of what's going on, I was extremely thankful at the fact they still misbehaved. I would separate two friends, turn around, turn back around, they're back sitting next to each other. If I had to discipline one of the girls, her and her best friend would side-eye me the rest of the class. The boys were mischievous, but they were literally still kids. Like, I made jokes about my kids being still teenagers because that's exactly how they were. Some of the more mischievous boys, I had 3 different boys ask if I want to come to their room for an after party. I had one of the boys come up to me and ask me if I liked his beard. He didn't have a beard. They were literally still kids. How you interact with any of the kids that's sitting in this audience is exactly how they still were. It did not matter that they had a target on them every single day. They were still kids, and that was one of the best things about being out there with them, was that they were still teenagers. You could tell who the friend groups are. You could tell when they had little tiffs with each other. You could tell who had crushes on each other. You could tell all these different things because they were still living their lives just like teenagers. And then you would have one-on-one conversations with them. Or in my case, I was able to read some of their personal statements. And they went through the exact same thing that anybody else went through. And like I said, I have permission to read some of their personal statements, but they had to navigate grief. They got to talk about their accomplishments. They got to talk about their dreams and aspirations. They got to talk about all these amazing things that they wanted to do and still accomplish, even though they're in an impossible situation. And that's literally how they were the whole time. So I'm going to read a few of their personal statements, and you will literally see how much they are alike to anybody. Like any of the kids you interact with, even adults, like some of the things that you went through, what you had to experience, they still do every single day on top of living through an occupation. So these excerpts that I'm gonna read, this one is from Mira, who was a sweetheart. Like she was mischievous, however, she had the sweetest demeanor, and it was so hard to discipline her because she would sit there with a smile, but then whisper and then turn back. But she was literally a sweetheart. "The moon is made out of cheese," screamed 7-year-old me as I got up from my position sitting too close to the TV. I ran to my parents to tell them the fascinating discovery I learned while watching my favorite show, Wallace and Gromit. The moment I saw Wallace fly to the moon to taste cheese, it changed how I saw this simple food. Whenever my mom placed a plate of cheese in front of me, I would sneak into my room, preserving it as samples for my research. A week later, she'd discover the rotting samples in my room and scold me. With a blend of innocence and determination, at just 7 years old, my heart was set on tasting the cheese I heard from my idol Wallace. I watched YouTube videos about the cheese and moon. I recorded my findings in a moon-themed notebook. The pages filled with my early curiosities bring a deep sense of nostalgia and pride. It reminds me of the passion that ignited my journey into research and science. To show her unwavering support for me, my mom had me write my dreams on a small piece of paper. I penned my aspiration to become a scientist, travel to the moon, and try its cheese. A decade has passed since I wrote that note, and it still hangs on my wall, a testament to my early dreams. Each time I glance at it, I'm reminded of the hope and ambition of my younger self, looking up to me with trust and expectation. The note is more than a memory of the past. It is a silent but powerful motivator. Whenever a plate of cheese is placed before me and its aroma fills the air, a nostalgic breeze takes me back to the childhood dream that ignites my passion. In my room hangs a picture of Wallace and Gromit. To its right, my old dream paper stands as a cherished memento of where it all began. And to its left, my new dream paper with evolved aspirations. In many ways, Wallace remains a cherished idol, a symbol of my early dreams and adventurous spirit. Through my childhood dreams of tasting moon cheese has changed, my passion for research and science has only intensified. The dream of flying to the moon turned into the dream of breaking through the barriers in my war-conflicted land so that I can build a better future for myself, my family, and my country. At 7 years old, she knew she wanted to become a scientist. The next person's personal statement, which I'll read excerpts from, was Yazin. So Yazin was one of my more rambunctious students who would make friends with everybody, which meant it didn't matter where I moved him in the classroom. He was literally going to find someone to talk to. If I had him face the wall, he probably would have made up an imaginary friend to talk to. Like, that's how talkative this boy was. But he also had one of the more advanced vocabulary than the other students. And you will, once I read some of the excerpts, you will see his level of sarcasm and his personality come out in his personal statement. Having a baby-faced, soft voice and below average height, most of my high school experience among a community of Homo sapiens, content on living off the milk of a camel was no favor to me. Anthropologically speaking, I wouldn't say among, because I don't think 15-year-old, 5'1" Homo sapiens exist. Since the advent of my adolescence, I knew I exhibited strange traits from my peers. From the basketball games that always made me look 3 years younger than my peers, trying to be cool by playing with the older high school kids, to being embarrassed during my first Model UN experience when I barely peered over the podium. These experiences were just the start of my personal vendetta that were like adding salt on a burn. The long trek quarantine cost me no service. Like other kids, I spent most of my time playing video games to distract myself from the real world. I thought I could finally interact with people who wouldn't judge me because we're all hiding behind an electronic screen. I was eager to build as many virtual connections and friendships with strangers as I could to fill my time. However, 30% of the time, if not more, strangers always assumed or purposefully misgendered me because of the voice which projected from my throat. According to WHO's statistics, 63% of the kids facing cyberbullying tend to go into severe mental illness. As excruciating and depressing as it may seem, I was not going to become another statistic and fall under the barricades of the bullies who probably lack vitamin D from their chronic online usage. We as teenagers, specifically in Palestine, don't have professional support systems where we can break our cemented insecurities. Personally, I think insecurities rise because of this profound dilemma of social norms built around us, which cause us to want to fit in, breaking the bricks of self-confidence. Learning the hard way, it is my calling to help and support teenagers the way I wish I was supported. Therapy is a process of teaching people how to heal themselves, which is what I've been doing and plan on doing for the rest of my life. Because he is smaller than his peers, he is constantly bullied. And because he knows he doesn't have that support, he wants to be a support for others, specifically teenagers, so they don't have to go through what they do alone. He is 16 and recognizes this. The next excerpt I will read is from Aya, who is she was very quiet. Have you ever looked at somebody and see like grief in their face? You know what that looks like, right? Until I read her personal statement, I didn't know where that came from. She was very quiet, very demure, very mindful. And when I read her personal statement, it made so much sense on why she was this quiet and reserved. I tried not to think too much about it as I slid my hijab on. It had been hidden in my closet for months. When I tried it on the day before, like every other time, I looked in the mirror and immediately took it off. That morning, as I secured it with a pin and threw one end to the back, I could not bring myself to catch a glimpse of my profile in the mirror. I rushed outside my room before I had the chance to second guess myself. I was a bit nervous about my dad's reaction, but all he said was, "It looks nice. Come on, hurry up, you're gonna be late for school." When I got in the car, I felt relieved. I finally did it. The hijab is an act of worship, but for the longest time, I feared it would constrain me from expressing myself. I thought a piece of fabric would cover not just my hair, but my identity, features, and even the way I think. I thought it would steal my freedom. I thought I wouldn't feel like me anymore. But as the car moved, and I felt the breeze brush against my face, I realized I felt pretty. A surge of pride sent shivers down my spine. I was so pleased I finally put aside superficial fears and hesitations and embraced a part of me I was denying. All I could think about throughout the day was my mom's reaction when she saw me. After school, my dad drove us to the hospital where my mom was being treated for cancer. I entered her room, and all my excitement disappeared as I saw her laying on the hospital bed unconscious. I received praise and congratulations from family members, but the only approval I wanted was from my mom. When she finally saw me, she tried to smile, but her tired, barely conscious body wasn't helping much. She tried kissing me but couldn't, so I kissed her instead. A week later, she died, but I knew she died proud of me. Unlike what I originally thought, walking around with a hijab made me feel more like myself, freer. I was free from the stereotypes and initial perceptions of the hijab, and instead saw it as a token of power and personal faith. I was no longer afraid of that piece of fabric. Instead, wearing it made me feel confident in my own skin. It became a symbol of my capacity and strength to fight against what society deems as most desirable or acceptable. Today, when I wear my hijab, I remember the girl who once conformed, the girl who was once scared of not fitting into the beauty standards imposed by society. But I also remember the girl who fought against herself to prove her strength. The hijab may not fit into today's beauty standards, but with it, I feel empowered. Again, she is 16. She's going through the same struggle most girls face. In addition to having to deal with her insecurities, watching her mom die from cancer, she's still living under occupation. "Kiss him," my father whispered softly as I hovered barefoot, over my friend's lifeless body. I leaned down to offer my final farewell. Waleed was shot dead while simply grabbing breakfast for his mother. Instead of succumbing to the desire for revenge, I found myself searching for a way to make peace with the very system that allowed such tragedies to occur. How could I wake up and see another Waleed on TV? That moment marked a turning point for me. I had reached my limit of losing those I loved and cared about. I knew that if change was to happen, it had to start with me and my community. That summer, I participated in a camp in the United States that brought together people affected by the war. It offered us a chance to engage in dialogue with the other side and to understand their perspective. Over 18 hours of intense, emotional conversations, I found myself sitting across from people I never imagined I'd share a room with. We all bared our souls, sharing our stories, expressing our truths. My emotions were a storm. Curiosity mingled with fear. I remember vividly a moment when a Palestinian girl asked a future Israeli soldier if he would shoot her if duty demanded. His answer, yes, made me question everything. Was this dialogue even worth it? Could we ever truly bridge the divide? Would these conversations only deepen the chasm between us. I felt a wave of disappointment, teetering on the edge of hopelessness. But the dialogue continued. I began to understand the purpose wasn't to solve the conflict in the room, but to see each person as human being. Slowly, empathy and mutual respect began to take root. A month later, I found myself as an exchange student living in a Jewish household. It was August 2023. I flew to San Diego for an exchange program. For the first time in my life, I lived under the same roof as a Jewish person. I had contemplated changing families multiple times before my arrival, but when I finally met them, I sensed that this year would be nothing short of extraordinary. My host father was Jewish, my host mother Persian, and they welcomed me, a Palestinian, with open arms. During a road trip with my host dad, we drove down an open highway, the endless road stretching out before us. No checkpoints. I could see the beach for the first time, despite it only being 15 minutes away where I lived my whole life. As we cruised along, I found myself wondering, when should we stop and can we keep going? These questions mirrored the daily struggles of living under occupation. At a crossroad, my host dad asked me, "Do you want to keep going or take a break?" A simple question, yet it symbolized the freedom I had often longed for. It was a moment of revelation. I realized how much I had grown, how I could make meaningful choices, and how I could find joy and connection even in the most challenging circumstances. I left that year not only culturally enriched, but much more open to new experiences than ever before. My host community didn't care about the differences in our countries, languages, or the imperfections of my English. They made me feel at home and embraced me as one of their own. My exchange year reaffirmed for me the vital importance of unity. What began as a painful goodbye led to me seeking understanding and connection. Through dialogue, I learned the true power of empathy and resilience. This experience illuminated the moments of choice we have when faced with adversity. I discovered that peace isn't merely in the absence of conflict, but in the presence of understanding and meaningful conversation. Now more than ever, I'm determined to bring change to my community, fueled by the hope that one day, all children will see their dreams realized, just like other children across the world. Jad is a better person than I am. Because for him to want to actively build to a solution and not want revenge after what he's seen, I can't say I want that. He is actively trying to change his community as a 16-year-old, willing to sit down across from people that he knows wants him dead. I got to read a host of personal statements that dealt with a lot of different things. Things that, again, anyone in any country would have to face. But then they also have what is currently happening to them. I have one older student that was one of the 12th graders that was helping out to get job skills. When everything started collapsing in October, their education system essentially went completely online. A lot of people don't have access to internet. They don't have computers. They don't have the money to be able to get the resources. At 15, 16 years old, him and one of his friends went around and got about 50 volunteers to go neighborhood to neighborhood to teach 1st through 5th graders because he didn't want them to get behind. That was his concern. Him and his friend's concern was that the kids under him would not be able to keep up in their schoolwork. So that is what he's doing. I have other students that were completely brilliant, One of them was able to do an internship at one of the labs, and his personal statement was about blood cell count, blood diseases, terminology that I'm a college graduate and I have no idea what half of those words were. And at 16 years old, he wants to be a doctor that looks at blood diseases. Another student wrote about her winning a competition that allowed her to go to Disney World. And she wrote about being able to meet the Imagineers. And she was talking about physics, velocity, how to create like these roller coasters and these rides. Again, she is 16 years old. Again, terminology where I'm like, I don't think I've learned any of this. But they have to be the best of the best, and they may still never have any of their dreams realized. They may get into the universities, they may get the visas to go, they maybe will get the money. Like, everyone knows how expensive a college education is now. They have to go through getting into the college, getting the visa, getting Israel to allow them to travel, and then be able to get the money to be able to finance. I'm in higher education, and right now, graduate students that are coming from countries abroad are being denied at about 80% rate for their visas. Their interviews, even if we had one student that we were working with since February, the earliest interview she could get was September, which means she could not start in the fall. And that's just to get the interview to see if she's able to get the visa. Still don't know where that money is coming from. These students literally have to be the most educated, the most driven, and they may still never have a single one of their dreams realized. They may not live long enough to be able to fill out an application. They may not be allowed to leave the country. And this is, they know they would have to leave their friends and the family and go to a brand new country that they barely know anybody in. And all of them still would want to do that to be able to go back and build back up their future. None of them are leaving their country because they're leaving and that's it. There is a sense of pride and social responsibility where all the students talk about getting their education, getting their jobs, getting the skills, knowledge, everything, and going back and building back up Palestine. Those are the youth of Palestine. I'm so incredibly proud of them because I don't know how I'd manage it. I had students disclose that they would have, say, Zoom sessions or something they have to do. An Israeli soldier will knock on the door, come into their room, shoot somebody from their window, and then just walk out. And they have to go back to studying, even after witnessing what they just saw. I have students whose identification that said unknown, because you can't say Palestine. They hate Palestinians. Jordan may not give them a ID, so they literally have unknown. If you're familiar with apartheid South Africa or enslavement, they have to have freedom papers, essentially. They don't get to just roam about, even other parts of Palestine. They have to have visas that allow them to be in the places that they are at. And they're still just kids. They are still teenagers. May Allah allow us to see a free Palestine in our life. Any questions? I'll give you guys a couple minutes.
When you went to the soldiers and they asked you the questions, did you have to lie just for like common sense, like Hamas and all that stuff?
Yes, I'm very good at compartmentalizing like my emotions. I can also say something without saying the full truth. So when I was asked specifically about my political views, my response was, I think all terrorist organizations should be eliminated. I never said who the terrorist organizations are. In my mind, I'm like, y'all need to be eliminated. But I'm also quick enough on my feet where I can think about stuff like that. Even when I got asked the question about Americans being pro-Hamas, I was like, well, the media, sometimes just perpetuates things. Are you sure that's what is actually happening? I'm able to divert answers, but I know this about myself, which is why I knew I could handle that situation. If you know you're gonna get flustered, if you know like you're, I don't wanna say lying, but if you know you can't handle questioning like that while there's an M16 in your face, while I think everyone needs to go visit because what they want to do is make your experience so uncomfortable you never come back, if you do not think you can navigate some of that, I don't advise going.
And where you were, did you face threat of bombing?
Raids, yes. Bombing, no. Gaza was maybe about 75 miles. At one point, when we were, one of the days where I ventured out closer to like northern area, which is like Akka, was when the bombings in Lebanon were happening. So we could hear the fighter jets and we knew what was happening, but no. The UNRWA school also was bombed the same time like we were teaching, but we weren't in immediate bombing threat. It was more so just like IDF would do raids around us. We knew they were close by, but as long as we didn't try to like draw attention to ourselves, like, and made dua like they weren't gonna come over to us.
Do you think it would be safe, like for like kids like us, like to go? Or, well, not safe, but like, do you think it would be like an immediate danger if like kids were to go?
Depends on what you mean immediate danger. And I say that just because your interaction is dependent on how that soldier feels like in that moment. I don't know if your parents would let you go. Again, when there were supposed to be 14 of us, 6 of us were the only ones that came because for one reason or another, people ended up just dropping off, whether it's fear, whether it's their family's fear, they decided not to go. And just in full transparency, the only time I felt scared in a way, it wasn't necessarily because I thought I was going to die. There was an interaction with one of the officers where the way he looked at me was not, death was not what he wanted from me. That was probably the most terrifying thing. Because the locals can't pray for Fajr, there's barely anybody out. It's me and 3 officers. Even if they did something, even I start screaming, who's come? Like nobody's coming. Those are things you kind of have to rectify. And is it safe for me to go? Death is not something I'm scared of. There are other things I'm more scared of, and knowing that is how one of the officers looked at me was the only time I was actually terrified.
So, just what was the average age range of these IDF soldiers who were doing
Oh, they were early 20s.
early? And then and it was mainly male, or did you have interaction with female? They don't.
There was a few interactions with female.
No, but
So
they don't separate.
they don't separate. No. They don't separate. And the ones, so they have to go into IDF. They're either Jews or Druze. And again, I'm not familiar with, it's D-R-U-Z-E. It's another religion in that specific, I think in the Levant area. I believe they have some of the same prophets as us, but they also like worship fire. Like it's a completely different, but most of them are Arabs. Those are the ones, they're actually local to there. But again, like you have to serve. Christians aren't allowed to serve in IDF either. So they treat Christians marginally better than Muslims, but Christians and Muslims are basically treated terribly. And the only people that are allowed to be in IDF are Druze and Jews. The ones that were Arab that I'm assuming are Druze, part of the Druze religion, I didn't have much difficulty with them. It was all the ones that were foreigners, that were European, American, those were the ones that I probably got harassed by the most.
One more follow-up. Did you have any prep work? How to deal with these foregoing? How to deal with these IDF soldiers and their constant psychological, just trying to trip you up? Like these type of, did you have any training or any?
Yes and no. So the organization does do an orientation with us. And there are some things that they go over. Like, for example, I could not say why I was going there. So when I came through Tel Aviv, it was I'm here for religious tourism. I could not actually say I was going there to help. And then it was things like I deactivated all social media whatsoever. Like I'm because of the department I'm in at the University of Michigan, and I've done a lot of pro-Palestinian things. I have control over this. I deactivated my whole website for them not to be able to pull up what I do. And again, you just have to know yourself. Like they kind of go through like these are some of the like there's a list of questions they could possibly ask you. They tell you at what point like they literally tell you don't lie, but they literally tell you try to avoid the truth as much as possible until they start pressing you out. So we had training like that, but nothing. There's only so much prep work you can do to actually have to face some of that. And that's what you really have to have a strong sense of self for you to be able to navigate something like that. Because if you know, for example, like you start stuttering when you're lying or like anything like that, that's probably not, right now is definitely not a good idea for you to go. I'm sorry?
What was like the highest point of danger?
So that morning, like I said, with the IDF soldier, because I can tell when somebody's intention is just completely malicious. That time, there was also raids going on around us. One of the times at the summer school itself, and again, teenagers are teenagers. They want to hang out on their balcony. We're literally yelling at them to go back in their room because if IDF sees all of them out, we were scared they're gonna start throwing tear gas and literally just raid just because. So those were probably the 2 times that we're closest in danger. When I left, tensions were getting worse again, and one of the other volunteers actually ended up having to be evacuated to Jordan. He was staying a little bit longer because he was doing some research. He ended up, it took him 18 hours to have to go into Jordan. That's usually a 2-hour ride because it got that bad, where they thought like immediately things were gonna start happening in Jerusalem and the West Bank, and they had to evacuate him out. There's, you got your hand up? Sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, if you can repeat it.
She's saying some people said that the events on October 7th was related to how
That I can't answer. That I can't answer. I can answer questions about my experience there and some of the conversations I have people with. I'm not a political scientist, so I'm not going to sit here and answer questions that would probably take a level of knowledge that I don't specifically have.
Did you like notice anything about the demographics of people who had blue visas and green visas?
Hijabis, like if you're a hijabi, you're probably gonna get a green visa. One of the other volunteers, he is Palestinian American too, had some family there, so his mom came with him, and she stayed with the family while he was volunteering with us. Him and I think his father and brother got blue visas. His mom got a green visa and was only permitted to stay 10 days. And so the theory is that they know if she has to leave, everybody has to leave.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah. Hayya ala salah. Hayya ala al-falah. Hayya ala al-falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
And then Aisha, yes.
how many of the students that you helped actually managed to get into universities?
This was recent. So the college applications have just opened up. So I've only had 2 reach out to me to do another read through of their personal statement. But college applications would have just opened up. So these students are literally applying like now to get into colleges.
So the 200 students in Gaza, are they still there?
I know of one student that has passed away. They've lost contact with some of them, so they don't know what happened to some of their other students. And then, like I said, there's about 60 of them that we're waiting to be able to get out to safer places. We don't know about the students that we've lost contact with. We honestly have no idea. Aisha, you had a question?
I did. Sally.
Alaikum salam.
I was wondering if in what you witnessed and encountered and heard from the students, did you find any parallels with themes of oppression or history of oppression here in America? Did you find anything that kind of reminded you of stuff that's happened here?
So yes, and I think, so a little bit about my background, I'm mixed. My father's Black American, Allahumma. But the way I could, again, the minute I saw some of their paperwork, I was just like, oh, this is freedom papers like an enslavement. I could see like, oh, at a certain age, boys become threats. I see that in the Black community all the time. Like boys are only allowed to be little for so long before they are immediately considered like a danger. So I saw like those type of things, and just because I know history, because of a little bit about like my background, I can point it to apartheid South Africa. I can point it to enslavement. I can point it to Jim Crow. There are different things that I can point to in history in terms of like America to exactly what it is that they're going through. I also see a lot of the resilience in women that you end up seeing in Black women. Like those are some of the correlations. Like I could immediately, like the minute I got there, I was like, oh, I get this, I understand this. Like I know what this is like.
So earlier you were mentioning regarding the question, one of the questions was what is your political view? Is that question like specifically your political view based in American politics or there?
American politics.
That scares me. Why do they care about this country's political view when they are totally like independent country as they're supposed to be?
They're not, like they know it too, that American supports them. I think when they're seeing like on social media, when they're seeing there's a strong movement that people are no longer, like the people itself are no longer supporting, and it's not just like Muslim groups. It is multiple demographics across the US that they can see are no longer buying their lies. And so that's why they were interested in my political views, because again, all the questions I got, Americans protest, why are Americans pro-Hamas? Why, like I understand that they're coming from a point of they're seeing Americans not supporting them, which is why they want to know my political views specifically, regardless of them getting weaponry, money, everything else from this government. They have an understanding that the people no longer support them, that only our government is, which inshallah, that means it's only a matter of time before the government is like, we can't support you because we're gonna have a mutiny on our hands over here. Inshallah.
Sorry, just a follow-up question. You had said at the Masjid al-Aqsa compound, young boys are not allowed in. It just depends on the soldiers?
No. So young boys, they actually have a criteria on what they're supposed to follow. Young boys are allowed to, and then I don't know at what age, like the age where they possibly hit puberty, where they're just like, no,
No, not allowed.
they're not, no. And they decide that. So they may look at a boy and say, no, he's too big, he can't come in.
It depends on the day, the soldier, whoever you're talking, they can just decide on.
Yeah, like that, there was no reason for me to be denied entry. I'm also American, I have an American passport, and they're not telling me, no, you just can't come in.
And this is local boys, they can just like deny you, okay.
Yeah, most, and again, so because a lot of locals can't pray in general, most of the people that actually try to go in are typically foreigners or those that are running the compound itself, helping to clean up, whatever else, in the zakat office. But yeah, at a certain age, boys are not able to go in. You can go in Friday Juma, but that's also when that's when they're more likely to storm the compound as well. There are ways to get visas, but one of my students, her grandfather got a visa to be able to pray Tarawih at Al-Aqsa. He got turned away, came back home with a bloody face. They decide how they're going to treat you in that moment.
Well, sorry, I have too many questions. What was your interaction with, you said you hadn't gone to Bethlehem. Obviously, they're all Christians. How was your, you said that they were very kind, but did they talk about the frustration, like, you know, being just not seen by the world that they exist? Did anyone express that?
No, a lot of them are very much like they look at, how do I describe? They're trying to change it within their own communities. Like, I don't know how to describe, like, they are very much like, how do we change it? They didn't speak ill about anybody else not stepping in to help. And I want to find, this is probably the most accurate picture I can describe of what their, what apartheid looks like out there, and this is in Bethlehem. They understand that IDF is just like the KKK and behave the same way as well.
But they get Christian tourists coming from outside, right?
They, again, it's completely up to, like, once you get to the border, you can be let in. Anyone can go right now. Whether they'll let you in is a different story. Two, there's still a level of fear. Like, you still go knowing that a host of things could happen. They're just not seeing church groups go. Like, church groups just are not going, so they're not getting, like, monetary donations. Even a Luxor, like, there is no way for me to donate virtually. Like, you have to go in with cash. Like, they have no card scan, there's no way to, you have to bring in cash. They have no other way. And a lot of that has to do with Israel determines if you're allowed to have the cash machines to be able to take money.
They're just suffocating people.
I saw another hand over here, I think.
I just have a comment. So my comment mainly is for the young teenagers and all that. You know, I'm listening to the personal essays, right? It's a very emotional thing to listen to these kids go through this part of their life, and it's. Oh, there we go. So, Assalamu alaikum. This is mainly for the teenagers around here. I'm adjusting. So, this is a very inspiring story. The essays that were written, I see all of you, majority of you, you're all blessed. You have more opportunities than what they have. You're not under occupation, you're not under all the stresses they're going to. What is your personal ambition? What do you think you want to do in order to achieve something for yourself, for your community, for Islam, and also for your parents? Do not look at my parents are this, my parents are that, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. These kids, even though they're the best of the best from Palestine, do you agree with that?
Yes, like they may never have the chance. They may never have the chance. And there were so many students far smarter than I am. I have my master's degree, and there were 16-year-olds sitting there in front of me that were smarter than I am, that may never have the opportunities that I have just because I'm here.
I say this to each one of you. I challenge you to do better than they. You have all the opportunities, way better than them. So I challenge each one of you to strive and achieve higher goals for yourself. I say for yourself, for your parents, for your community, for Islam, and for being Americans as well. I don't know any of those kids, but I do know that each one of you have the opportunity to do better than them. They do not have 2 brains, 2 heads, 2 eyes, or 4 eyes. They're not more special than you. So each one of you can do better. To you.
Those are my students.
Are they all Palestinian students?
Yeah, those are all Palestinian. And then the total group. This was the almost. Come on. This was all the different grade levels. It will pull up. So they're color coded based on the class that they're in. Most of my students are the ones in the back. The 10th graders are under them, the 9th, and then 8th going into 9th grade. And all of us in the navy blue are the instructors.
Sister Shaina, can I make one request? By any chance, is it possible to share the essays with the Sunday school? So that,
Yes, can we wait till after the application cycle? Just because I don't want anything to look like plagiarism or ends up being replicated somewhere. I don't want them to affect their admissions into school if they're like, oh, you copied this off. This is actually, so afterwards, yes, I'll be more than happy to send it to the Sunday school after application process is over. Why, yes.
But you said you had a website where you post online stuff. Where can we find like this organization online?
So this is, so when I was talking about the website, I meant the website that at my current job. This has nothing to do with my current job. Al-Nazak is the name of the organization, and it's Horizons Academy is their summer program specifically. So that is online that you can look at. But yes, there was another question. I saw a hand earlier. No more questions, comments?
So
Yes.
I can put more, I can say this to all of you. If you are thinking of going to the West Bank, Al-Aqsa, it is possible. As long as you get the blessings of your parents, please do not sneak and go to Palestine. Do it the right way. It's possible as an individual. I personally went myself earlier this year, so it's doable for those that want to do it.
Yes.
So for the tourist aspect of it,
Mhm.
how would you expect the experience to be different for families?
Expect to be separated. So you're not gonna be able to always stay with like your wife. I know someone, and it's not recent, but someone I know went maybe almost 20 years ago, and at 11 years old, he was separated from his parents and interrogated without them. So again, there are no rules. My mom's eldest sister was strip search when she went 30 years ago. Her husband, her kids couldn't protect her from, like, just know that, yes, you can travel there, but there are no rules. Like, that, essentially, that's what it comes down to. It's, you will be pulled to the side. The other thing is, so I got asked a lot if I was Muslim. If you don't look Arab, that's another thing, where IDF will stop you. Are you Muslim? Some of the other volunteers had to read Surah Fatiha. I had to do my Shahada. It sounds very odd, but they check you before you're allowed to go in to pray. Just be prepared for anything, including the fact that you may not be able to be with your family and you're being separated. That's literally what you just have to prepare for, and if you're willing to risk that. The other thing is, I don't know if you heard earlier, they have a lot of women out there don't wear hijab because you specifically get harassed when you are hijabi. One soldier particularly looked at me and was just like, don't be offended if they ask you to take that off. Yeah, male soldier. They don't care. They do not care. So just be prepared for stuff like that. Like if you want to go as a family, that is absolutely something that they could ask. If you have wives that cover, you have daughters that they may just say like, take that off. We have to make sure she doesn't have something under there. So yes, you can travel as family. Yes, you can go there, but just know the risk. What time is Salah?
9:30, so wrap up.
Okay. I wonder if I can play this. There's one girl from Gaza that recorded something about the summer academy. Will this play sound?
You put it next to the mic.
Okay. Can you? I don't know where the sound is coming from right now. It's all the way up. Oh, it's coming from the projector?
Yeah, pause it for a second. Trying to change the audio source.
I was hoping to be able to play one of the girls in Gaza that, again, she's part of the academy that wasn't able to go. But again, she's talking about her dreams and aspirations of going. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like I'll be able to, and it's time for Salah. But Jazakallah khair, everyone, for coming out and listening. I'm open to answering any other questions after this as well, if you have any more questions, okay?
You look
What?
director. That was amazing.